very successful. They got leased up. They're doing well. They're kicking butt. They believe their own stuff, and all of a sudden they go and say they're going to borrow against all of this. They're going to cross-collateralize all this. They're going to borrow and either build or buy another asset. Now they're going to borrow from their house. They're going to borrow from their house to buy another house because they think they can make more money. And all of a sudden you've contaminated this stuff. Because this investment's now gone south. So it's got a single tenant, and this tenant blew out. There could be a lot of things. They could go bankrupt, okay? You know, you get into a big squabble with them. Whatever the problem is. The lease was up and you thought they were going to renew and they didn't. It doesn't really matter how you get here, but now all of a sudden you've got these two great performing assets and you've got one that's not performing at all. So you've got, I forget, you got 120,000 square feet and it's vacant. Okay? And it's 2000, I mean, I wrote this in 2011, I'm thinking back it's 2009 or whatever. And now it's in a submarket where rents are $21 a square foot, but vacancies are 25%. And it's a relatively small submarket, and you got 5 new buildings coming online. So these guys want whatever tenants out there. What are suburban office vacancies typically in this country and in this state? What's typical suburban office vacancy?
It looked like it was a little like high teens in the nation.
20%.
I'd say nationwide it's probably about 15%, which is roughly what it is here in Florida. Maybe in a bad time it might be 20. Again, institutional grade stuff, Class A stuff. So, I mean, all I'm trying to point to here is the market's already blown up. You're already in a bad market, and somebody's got new product coming on, which they started building before things got bad. So now you're in a bad way. You got no cash flow. You're in a bad market. You got a bunch of product. There was a question, you know, I think you asked the other day. Do you only contemplate vacancy? No, you contemplate vacancy plus supply coming online, okay? And the problem is you've got 2 performing assets that are being dragged by something here. And now you're going to be in default because you got to have at least, what, 65% occupancy in this building in order not to be in default. So that's kind of the baseline. So what do? You go hire a broker. What was the broker's name?
Tricky and slippery.
Tricky and slippery. That should already warn you. So you hire a marketing agent called Tricky and Slippery, okay? And Tricky and Slippery brings you a deal. They bring you this great deal, okay? And Tricky and Slippery says, hey, I'm bringing you a deal, but I'm working both sides of the fence here. I'm both the tenant and the landlord rep. Now, you can do that in residential transactions. You don't do that in commercial space. That doesn't work, okay? Because you've got an agency responsibility to the person you're working for. So they bring me this great deal. And what was the deal? I think it was
1%, or what do you want?
well, so the guy wants to pay $17.50.
65,000 square feet.
He wants, so it's not going to get me. It doesn't solve my problem totally from a covenant perspective yet. But the guy wants 65,000 square feet. He wants 1,500 now. Okay, but he wants to pay well below market. What are some of the other things he wants?
He wants a TI.
Full service.
So he wants well, it's full service, but that's common in office. He wants 1 year free rent.
Yeah.
That doesn't solve my problem.
And then 75.
He wants $75 TI.
Yeah.
What else does he want?
3 years and three.
He only wants 3 years.
Yeah.
3 5-year extensions
He wants extensions.
or options.
Yeah, he wants options. What else does he want?
He wants to be able to take
He wants a
visual
right.
space.
He wants a right of refusal.
Right.
So he wants basic control of the building and say, if I want to expand, I can expand whenever I want to. Okay. What else? Is there anything else there? I mean, I tried to hit as many different points as I could hit, you know? I mean, I tried to hit them all, at least. So, where do you tackle this thing? So, I would start, and so,
The tenant.
well, and the thing is, it's a startup. So I asked for, I asked for a credit app. At least show me who you are. The guy doesn't sign the credit app, and he gives me no information. And it turns out he's a startup. But there's a big but. It's his name's Steve Gates.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Steve Jobs and Bill Gates together. So. And he owns the arena team. He's the guy that owns the MLS team, right? He owns the arena football team. He's a big guy in town. I mean, you could call him Huizenga, or you could call him, you know, Steve Berard, or you could call him, give me some of the other guys here in Broward. The guys that got buildings named you. Michael Jackson, you know? Not the Moonwalk guy, the Auto Nation guy. I mean, so it's like a big guy. And so I would start. I gave you these 5 basic tools the other day, which were the 5 C's of credit. I would just start there. It's a simple way of, so, and kind of interesting, the reason I bring that up, because what was the first C of credit?
Character.
Character, right? And so, we got a guy character here. We can argue either side of the fence, but we got a guy character. I mean, this guy, like, how would it look if Huizenga didn't pay his bills while he was alive?
Bad.
That wouldn't look good, because he was like a man of this town. If Michael Jackson doesn't pay his, everybody knows he's a CEO, or I guess he's retired, of Auto Nation. If that guy doesn't pay his bills, what do you think when Terry Styles was alive, if he didn't pay his bills?
Reputation gone down.
I mean, that was the whole thing. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to scrap if he's got to, okay? But his reputation is above all else in this community, okay? And if you own the arena team, I mean, you want people to come. You don't want people to say that guy's a deadbeat. So, I'm not saying you do the, you know, but you've got something to bank on, because all the other C's, you don't have a lot of capacity. Well, there's no way to meet repayment here. You got a startup company, it's got no assets, so it doesn't generate cash flow, it has no assets to pay off, okay? They got no skin in the game. Well, they got no skin, so they got no skin in the game. You got no collateral, right? The guy doesn't want to sign the personal guarantee that's on the bottom of that application. And as far as conditions, I mean, the conditions are not favorable to the landlord. They may be very favorable for the tenant, but they're not favorable for the landlord, okay? So, so who would do this deal?
I don't, in certain conditions.
Nobody.
Not like that. I would not do it like that.
Like that.
Based on the 5 C's of credit.
No, I mean, it doesn't satisfy the covenants. I
You only have 1 C to work with.
In the building.
One at a time, Jack.
I thought there was another tenant and they were filling the rest of the space.
They are. They are the
They're
tenant.
moving their corporate office there.
Was there already a
They're-
tenant in this
No,
building?
they left.
They left.
So the people that left in 2010 or whatever?
It's empty
building.
now.
So this is half your
So
business.
this doesn't solve the whole
Doesn't solve anything.
covenant violation issue, but let's be pragmatic, okay? So let me tell you a trick. Trick number one. Trick number one. A bank does not want to own your real estate. So a bank is going to do whatever a bank needs to do to make sure that that loan is not in default, and that you find a way to solve their problem. They do not want, there's, what's Oreo? What's Oreo? It's a cookie, right? No, what's Oreo?
Trick question.
It's funny, there was an issue the other day, I didn't even see it. Somebody was asked, somebody was asked in Congress what Oreo was, and they didn't know. Okay. Wasn't he like an obstetrician or something? He's like a gynecologist, he probably thought it was a cookie. I mean, Oreo stands for other real estate owned. What is the business of a commercial bank? Commercial bank has 2 businesses. What's a business of a commercial bank in this country? What does a commercial bank do?
They lend money.
Well, they take deposits,
Yeah. They charge fees.
and they loan money.
They loan money.
They take deposits,
And they loan
and they
money.
loan money. Does anywhere under that umbrella, does owning real estate fit into that?
No.
No. And so banks cannot, the only real estate banks can own is
They're off.
the buildings they occupy. Did you know that, or did you just guess?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
And so they can own real estate, they can own their real estate. When they take real estate back, when they step in and enforce the security interest that they have, they got to classify that under a line item in their balance sheet called other real estate owned, and they've got a regulatory period under which they got to sell it. So the clock's, I believe it's 5 years.
That was Fargo.
So they've got, there's an end, and so they don't ever want to own it, because the minute you own it, you spend so much in legal fees and whatever to get it,
They own a ticket.
and it's already impaired. That means that the guy that owned it had no equity. His equity was gone, and he didn't see, or she didn't see, any path to keeping it. So now you own it, it's already not worth what you loaned on it, and now you got a gun to your head, you got to sell it by a particular date. So banks never, ever, in fact,
You said you're regulated from owning. They're like,
well, no, I mean, but they've got to enforce their security interests, they take collateral, you know, so I mean, they've got a security interest in the real estate, they record their mortgage, and so and sometimes they may have other collateral that's pledged by a guarantor, so they may wind up taking real estate, but they really don't want to take it, okay?
I thought you just said,
Even if you have a bunch of equity on it, on that house, there's
Listen, I go back to, by the time a lender has to perfect the security, or has to collect on a security interest by taking possession of the asset, there's already gone value. As I go back to, the creditor, if there was value there for him, would defend it, right? I own a house, it's worth 100. I borrow 80 from the bank. Now the house is worth 90. Am I going to fight for it?
what if the
Shit,
house?
I will. What are you going to give up? 10? You give 10 bucks? I ain't going to give 10 bucks.
What if the house?
I may.
What if the
I
house?
may not fight for it if it's worth less than 80.
What if the
But
house?
at 90, I'm going to fight for it.
What if the house was worth like 200,000?
Then you're not going to have a problem with the bank.
but that happened 10 years ago.
Well, okay, but then but that's an easy workout for the bank. That's an easy workout. So if liquidity is a problem, so when you're less than 80, now we're talking about bankruptcy, right? And I distinguish between insolvency and bankruptcy, right? Illiquidity and excess of liabilities over assets.
I see.
So the only way the bank's going to get here is when the value of the asset is worth
Nice.
theoretically what the debt is, and pragmatically is probably less.
Yeah.
Because at some point this guy's going to defend it. Okay, so and even if it gets to that point, if it's cash flowing, you may still fight because you think it's going to turn around at some point. You're not just going to give it back. Okay, so. Okay, I give you you got to do this deal. You got to do this deal. The bank's going to bitch or make it hard at you, but you got to do this deal. You got to do this deal because of that. Because if you don't do this deal, nothing else is going to come down the line. Because you got one guy that's been successful already, okay? Doesn't have a lot. You asked a question. He sold all his stuff for stock, so he's got net worth, but he doesn't have cash. But he's a successful entrepreneur who's tied to the community. He's going to work hard. You got these serial entrepreneurs. So I may be wrong, but I want to gamble on this guy because I don't like what I see coming down the pipeline. Because I don't know when the next chance is going to be to get somebody there. Okay? And it's going to be easy for a bank. If I get a 65,000 square foot tenant, and it's like a guy that's reputable in town, and he's a successful entrepreneur, he's got a track record, the bank will give me a waiver for a year or two on that occupancy requirement. It solves their problem, it solves their problem, and it solves my problem. Now, I may ultimately have to get it back. It may not be a permanent waiver. They may waive it for a year, they may waive it for 2, but they're gonna give me, they're gonna work with me, because you know what, at the end of the day, you know, most of the portfolio is performing. So, you know, and I'm at least current. I mean, I haven't defaulted payment-wise on the loan yet, okay? So, now, I've got to find a way to get these other C's to work, right? I think I like the character. Can I change capacity? No. I mean, the company's a startup. I can't change that. Can I work with collateral? Maybe, maybe not. The guy's not going to give you a personal guarantee, I'll tell you that. That's from experience. The guy's not going to give you a personal guarantee. You can ask for it. You're not going to get it. Successful people don't give personal guarantees. Now, maybe I can get deposits. Maybe I can change some of the conditions, right? Maybe I can start modifying this in a way that may make sense. The way I would have graded this thing, if everybody didn't get 100, because there's certain considerations that I would look into, right? So, on the first one, and some of you that did submit it did do it, is was there a firm recommendation made? So, most of you said, you know, wrote a memo and said, this is what I think we should do. Some people said, well, maybe if we do this, or maybe if we do that. In real estate, as with any other business, you've got to make decisions. And you got to be brave enough to potentially be wrong. And so, you got to fit your role. You're the CFO in this company, you've got to make a call. Now, the easiest call to make is to say, I don't want to do the deal. Oh, I want a personal guarantee. Well, how are you ever going to get a deal done? I mean, you're really far away. You've got to, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So you gotta send back a counter to this guy with enough to say, okay, maybe I can work. You know, he's gonna have to move. But if you start with non-starters, oh, I want a personal guarantee.
You may miss an opportunity.
Huh?
You may miss an opportunity.
You're gonna miss an opportunity, and you don't know when the next guy is. So. Do I make a firm proposal? Okay, do I make a decision, okay? I only saw one Excel spreadsheet in the submissions that I had. I'm not sure I would have addressed it the way it was addressed, but did we make a financial analysis? So, I think we do this. Okay, well, I think we should put rents at 21. Well, I think we should do a 5-year deal. Well, what are the underlying metrics to that? I mean, God gave us Excel. Why don't we use it? Gave us calculators. Why don't we use them? You know? So, do we support our analysis? Do we support our conclusions with facts? And so, that's a thought process I'm trying to teach here. It's not whether this case makes sense or not. Are we substantiating our conclusions with evidential matters? I'll show you what I did in a second. It's not right or wrong, but it's an approach to try to say, hey, I'm going to try to attack this, and let me tell you where I think it makes sense and where it doesn't make any sense. I'll come back to that. I'll show you that really quickly. Did we evaluate sponsorship? Did we address the market, the vacancies? What was under development? Was the pricing alternative addressed, right? Some people just said, okay, we'll do the deal. Well, if I do the deal here, I may give this guy a sub-market rate day one, but I got to get back to market. Why do I have to get back to market?
Because it's still going up.
I understand that, but why do I have to get back to market? There's a fundamental reason why I got to get back to market quickly.
Valuation.
Valuation. When I sell this, what are people going to value it at?
The income.
The income stream. So, I don't care. I don't care about this. I don't care about this. As long as I get myself back to market before I sell it.
Yeah.
Because I want somebody valuing my market rent. So, I got to ramp up. So, was that addressed? Okay? Things to consider. Bumps. These guys, I didn't say that. 3%. Is that market? Is it not market? Can I use bumps to get myself to market? Can I work that way? Okay? Was credit risk addressed? Deposits, guarantees? TI. What's standard TI? We mentioned this in class the other day. What's standard TI for office in Florida?
Was it $50?
35, 40,
It's 20.
45. So the question is what do I do with this? So can I afford it? I don't have any cash. So how do I pay for all of this, number one? And number two, is it worth anything? Maybe I do it, but is it worth anything to me at the end of the tenancy? Sometimes you may make above market expenditures in TI if you think it's got a residual value. Yes, Ryan?
That's something I looked at, but because it wasn't a new building, I kind of assumed that this money would be kind of.
Well, I'm not saying
Right,
it would. I'm not saying it would. And I've walked into situations where previous management has put in like $100 of TI in something that you got to tear out, and it's a shame. But sometimes you can,
But then you got the carpets and the things that don't benefit the next tenant.
right. But I mean those are very subjective calls. James, you had a question?
Now let's go back to the 1 year abatement. Would you extend that risk to a startup with no? I know
You probably need to, but
I
I'll
know
tell
he's a
you
famous
why.
guy and he's rich and all, but a lot of startups.
Yeah, well,
fail
but
in the
that's-
first-
So a tenant wants you to be his bank. You don't want to be his bank, but he wants you to be your bank. Wants you to be his bank. You got to help him with cash flow. He doesn't have cash flow to pay you rent. So he's got to invest in his business. Whatever cash he's got, he's hiring people. He's putting marketing material out there. So, I mean, you may not typically see abatements that way, but it's the same rationale. You're helping a tenant with cash flow during a period. So, you're not going to do it without getting a whole bunch of other stuff that makes you, in the absolute, would you just give it out of the blue? No. But for a startup, they're going to ask for it. I mean, a lot of retail people go into a new location. Hey, I've lost all the clients that I have. I've got to start all over again. Were the risks not following 3 contemplated? Were lease terms and renewals evaluated? So you don't want to give right of refusal to somebody. You may want to give somebody a right of first offer, i.e. Hey, Adriana, I got a guy knocking on my door. He wants to take the space that's contiguous to you, and he's willing to pay $20,000 or $20 a square foot. Do you want the space before I start negotiations with him? Now I'm giving you a right to come, but I'm not giving you the exclusive right to say I've got right to that space if that guy takes it, because now I've got a contractual problem. Okay, so you can give the tenant a certain level of flexibility, but you can't give them the exclusive right to that space. They can't control it. Was the abatement period evaluated? Were the expansions or extensions evaluated? I don't have problems giving people extensions as long as you're at market. Or you can negotiate market. What you don't want to do is give somebody a right to extend and continue to extend a below market rent. Okay? And then finally, were any potential conflicts of interest with a broker addressed? And so if I got a guy repping both people, I mean, if I got a guy repping 2 people, he's not repping me. Okay, so I want somebody repping me. I don't want somebody repping 2 other people. Let me quickly show you what just what I did. I'm not going to show you a write-up. I'm not going to push this thing. I'm going to try to show it here. If I can figure out. Oh. No, it's not on.
I don't know how to use that.
You know what?
It's a smart board.
Okay, listen. I'll just put it up there. Okay. How do I
It's behind this one.
Buttons behind the screen.
Yeah.
That gave me like vertigo. Last time I had to look at that screen.
Okay, so the first thing that I did was, oh, by the way, what a surprise that I opened up a spreadsheet and the cursor was an A1. Look at that. Wow.
Everything I learned in this class.
Well, so the first thing I did is I laid out, so I'm going to do a net present value analysis. We teach you all these tools, but you got to use them, right? What's net present value? What's net present value? So we're going to compare a cash stream with what our investment is today, and we're going to account for the time value of money. And so basically, an analysis tells us that if capital budgeting tells us what? If a net present value is positive, it's greater than zero, are we going to make the investment?
Yes.
Yes, we're going to make the investment. How does IRR play into NPV?
IRR is better than.
Someone got it with the grumblings.
I mean,
It has to
you
be
just
better.
graduated. Anytime you graduate, you know what IRR is.
It has to be better than.
The internal rate of return.
It has to be better
The
than.
internal rate of return is the rate at which the net present value, right, is zero. So it is the cost of capital at which net present value is zero. So it's a project return, but it's where the cost of capital is equal to zero. I'm sorry, where the net present value is equal to zero. So why do we use IRR?
To calculate.
That's a gauge.
Well, why don't we just use net present value?
Because that's a
just a
full
numerical
number.
value.
The IRR gives you the efficiency.
But I already got a criteria. If a project has a net present value of greater than zero, I should invest in it.
Yes.
Why don't I just invest in it?
Comparing project returns. Comparing project returns.
I mean, you got
Because, going
other
along those
options.
lines, because capital is not limitless.
You have other options.
So if I'm looking at project 1, 2, or 3, they may all have positive net present values, but I may not have enough capital to invest in all threes. So I use IRR to tell me in priority which one has the highest return, which one has a second, and which one has a third. And so then I would deploy the capital that I do have available based upon the project returns. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, now, so first thing I did is I said I assumed the cost of capital of 10%. Why? Because it was easy. Okay? But I said, let me lay out the proposal that this guy gave me and see if I can do it. And I actually went ahead and took a liberty and said, his 3-year proposal is really a 4-year proposal to me. I already went ahead and said, okay, I'll give him a free year, but I want 3 years worth of rent. Some people, you got to make sure that he's not assuming he's paying rent 2 years, he's got a year free. So I laid this out. I assumed, you know, $9 operating expenses in a suburban office building. You know, it is what it is. And all of a sudden, my net present value is a negative $3.8 million. Can I do this deal?
No.
I can't do this deal. So I said, okay, let me start biting this thing. Let's start biting this elephant. Let's bite the legs, you know. And so I said, okay, well, what if I just make a couple of changes and let me just extend the lease term? Because that's probably, if the guy wants to grow and he wants to take 65,000 square feet and expand and he wants all these options, I mean, a guy wants to grow the business. So the easiest thing I can do is this, well, let me make the term and let me make this, I got to minimize it, but let me make this an 11-year lease term with a 1-year abatement period, okay? And then I want to say to Tricky and Slippery, guess what? I'm not paying you full commission for the whole period. After the first 5 years, you know, you're scaling back, okay? I'm not just going to pay everything. So, play with the stuff a little bit, increase the cash flow. Guess what? It still doesn't work. What do I do now? Okay, now I got to start getting a little bit. So where can I start making some changes, right? And so I said, okay, well, let's start doing some things, okay? And all of a sudden I said, well, you know what? Listen, I got to get myself back up the market somehow. So you know what? I'm going to make bumps nice and easy for you, but I'll make them 3.5%, so I can start getting myself back up to where I need to. I mean, it's almost insignificant. 3.5. What's the big deal? You know. Now, I didn't do it here, but you could quickly, you know, calculate when that gets you to the 21s. You can say, hey, year 3 or year 5 or whatever, I'm back to market, right? And I said, okay, you know what? I can give you standard TI. I don't have the money. I haven't figured out where I'm going to get the money yet, because I want to go to the bank for that one. I want to say, Mr. Bank, you got to give me a line here, because I want to solve your problem. You got to solve my problem, okay? But I'll give you standard TI. You want, like, you know, gold plumbing? You got to pay for that. I mean, I can't give you something that nobody else in the industry is going to give you. The guy next door is not going to give you that. So I'm going to give you what's standard in the industry, right? I played around with the commission again, and he's kind of said, boom, and all of a sudden, now the deal starts working with very little modifications. Now, you know,
Yeah, by 50%.
Yeah,
It's not a little more than
I'm giving him market TI.
Market.
That's a large part
Well,
of
at least,
Market
hold on. Don't take this person. At least I submitted an answer. No, but what I'm saying is at least
Points
don't
don't
get
matter. Points don't matter. Points don't matter.
No, but I'm not saying it works.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is, and really what I'm trying to teach is am I going from the gut, or am I trying to find things that may work? This may not work with a guy, but at least I've got some substantiation to say, I can give you market. He may not buy it. I got much bigger problems than that still, because I'm still out.
You still didn't do good.
I'm still out $3.5 million the first year. And it's not all of it, because I'm not going to incur all those operating expenses while the building is empty, okay? Because he's not going to pick up the 65,000 square feet right away, okay? Which is why he wants the abatement. I'm going to have to build it out, but I'm out $3 million, so I still have to find a way to get the guy to, maybe he can give me a letter of credit for a year or two. Maybe he can go to his bank and have the bank issue a standby letter of credit, you know, for maybe $1 million or $2 million. Maybe I can twist his arm and have him pledge some stock or something. You know, maybe I haven't solved the problem yet, but at least I've gotten to the point where mathematically, now I've got a deal that makes sense economically. Maybe I can push it. You know, I can start doing what-if analyses and say, okay, I want to get down to $100,000, or I want to get to 1, because I'm satisfying my cost of capital. Maybe I can give them $45. Okay, so but with only a couple of little tweaks, all of a sudden you start getting yourself. And again, maybe it doesn't work, but what I'm trying to teach is analyze the proposals people are giving you, okay, with the tools you've been given, and then come back. I'm not going to do this. Not going to do this. I used to use a case study where we do effective rent. Have you guys done an effective rent analysis? You know, a tenant comes to you and says, oh, I only want to pay 15, all right? And market's 21. Well, how do I do a net present value analysis where I can start you at 15, but essentially get the same net present value as if I were at 20, you know, started at market? So use the tools that you've been given so that you've got empirical answers to give people. So when the agent comes to you and says, oh, you just knocked me down, you know, 50%. Oh, well, okay, well give me $3.5 million, and I'll give you the $75 a square foot. Okay, this works for me, and it's market.
Yeah.
Now, if I can't get the deal done, I can't get the deal done. But I want to. So that's all I wanted to, you know, illustrate with that. I'm not trying to say that's the right answer, the right solution. You know, this would require a lot more work. It really would require going and figuring out at what point you get back to market. I don't think at 3.5 you get back to market quickly enough. You're probably way out here. You probably want to get back to market within 3 or 4 years. Okay, you know, maybe you play and you say, hey, I'll only give you 9 months. There's a lot of different ways to skin this cat, okay? I'll give you the 1750, but I can only give you 9 months. There's a lot of different, maybe you can bump up that. There's a lot of different ways to skin this, okay? But you got to put numbers to it. You can't just say, yeah, I think so. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. And that's a problem. A lot of times we make decisions without having the empirical support to do them. So any questions on that or how, you know? Yes?
The question is, so is K is representing cost of capital?
Discount rate.
Yeah, is that different from discount rate or?
No, the KC, the cost of capital is the discount rate. Okay, so that's assuming that my cost of capital is 10%. So, I mean, we kind of played around the other day when we did weighted average cost of capital, and I think I came in today's environment, again, depending on who you are, where interest rates are so low today, probably cost of capital for most companies today is probably closer to 8%, but you know, I mean, 10 is a nice, easy number to always do analysis, right? One of the things that we always used to, a lot of times tenants come to you and say, hey, I need to spend 75 in TI, but I don't have it. So say, okay, I'll do it, but I'll amortize it over the lease term. And so what you do is you do it, you put a 10% cost of capital on it. And then you amortize the release term. Say, you know, if you want me to be your bank, I got to be compensated for it. If I've got the capacity to do it, I want to be compensated for it. Okay?
Wouldn't you do that anyway? Because I mean, it does say it's $2 million for upfront. If you already have to get a
well, that's another way to skin that cat is you do it, but then you amortize it into the lease structure. Okay? Here I'm going to the guy saying, listen, you're starting out. What do you want gold plumbing for, dude? I mean, live in regular offices like everybody else, and then. Or if you really want the fancy stuff, then you know, pay it yourself. Now, the problem that you run into then becomes a cash problem there, right?
Yeah.
If I got to do another $2 million, I don't have the cash. So I already have a problem here to deal with. So I want to try to minimize that problem.
If you're kind of using the Oreo example on why the bank will not default and take your property, what, like, was that just it? They're not going to take it. You can leverage that to.
I mean, I would tell you. Look, I can't guarantee. I can't guarantee that a bank's not going to take your property. Okay, I can't guarantee that. But I can tell you my personal experience. And if you look back, you know, I mean, 2008, 2009 were horrible periods in this country. And I'm not saying banks didn't take stuff back because they did, but they worked all kinds of deals with developers. You know, hey, we're going to take this, that, and we're going to split it into an A and a B. And so. You know, they took a certain amount guaranteed as A, so that, you know, the original debt was 1,000. So they took 800 back in A, and then they did a participating note with B with you, where they said, okay, you're going to write another note for 20, and we're going to participate in any, you know, so junior, right, we're only going to have this one, but if you make more than the 20, you know, we'll split the profits with you, okay? So they did a bunch of, sometimes they just outright wrote down some of the debt.
They may do that with developers, because with developers, if you owe the bank 5,000, if I owe the bank 100,000, I have a problem. But if I owe the bank 100 million, the bank has a problem. They may do it with the
I've said that before, right? You owe the bank $20,000, who's got the problem? I do. You owe the bank $20 million, who's got the problem?
The bank.
The bank. Now, I mean, the other way, Brian, that I would answer that is I went to several banks, you know, that sort of 2008, 2009 time, and in fact, you know, what happened with a lot of bankers, most bankers that I knew from then aren't in the business. I saw a guy the other day that's still in the business, surprisingly, but most people, you know, are out of it. And the ones that stayed in the business for a while went from being production guys to being workout guys. So you know, every guy I knew was dealing with REO and trying to get rid of it. We never found anything to buy.
The deals that he originated, he was restructuring.
Well, maybe not the ones he did. They were sort of, you know, swapped, or they went to work at a different bank or whatever, you know. But the rationale is that, I mean, we didn't find anything. And we looked, and I looked with other people, and we couldn't find anything. So really what banks wound up taking was junk, was really what was unworkable, okay? There's no guarantee of that. I'm just kind of trying to tell you, the bank's going to try to work, as much as they can with you. So anyway, I want to spend just 10 quick minutes prepping the next case study. And so we're going to start transitioning the class to some diligence concepts. There's still a fair number of financial concepts that I want to cover with the class, so we may not totally jump to diligence stuff next week, but I want to start that transition. And the case study that I prepared for you this week is a commercial closing. So, kind of by law and by business practice in this country, we have buyers and sellers summarize a real estate transaction in what we call a closing statement. And really it used to be physically the place. It's no longer, closings aren't like, you don't go to a lawyer's office and sit there for 2 days anymore. It's all sort of done virtually now, but it's the one time in space in which you can account for all the cash flows in and out of a real estate transaction. And so a settlement statement becomes the written history in which we summarize all the cash that comes in, all the cash that goes out of a real estate closing. There's something called RESPA or something like that, which is, there are guidelines on residential closings. There's still forms, when you go borrow money, you get these truth in lending forms, and now there's something called I think settlement or closing statement now. It used to be called the HUD-1. What's it called now?
Settlement. It's called the settlement.
Settlement now, but it used to be called the HUD-1, and basically, but that's sort of a formulated, government mandated thing that says, you will use this form and you will account for these items. Commercial closings are nothing like that. It's like the Wild West. Because at the end of the day, everything in a commercial closing is negotiated. Now, there may be common practices that are used in certain markets. It may be common for a seller to provide title, and others it may not be. Why would a seller provide title? Well, they've already got an existing policy. It's probably cheaper for them to endorse it than for a buyer to come in and buy his own policy. Just giving you that as an example. A seller to facilitate transactions, you're starting to see now what you're seeing now in a lot of contests are a seller will go on ahead and do environmental, building conditions, survey, pay for all that, and make it available to the buyer. Now, the buyer will still have to pay a reduced amount to have that report endorsed to them, but the heavy lifting's already been done by the seller. So I'm just giving you examples, but everything is subject to negotiation. Okay, and they are, and they're negotiated. Who handles? How does this happen? So you've got some sort of closing or escrow agent, right? Are they going to see an attorney involved in a transaction that's going to act as a closing agent, and they're going to prepare the settlement? A lot of times you see title companies doing it now. And so, in the large commercial transactions, there's 2 huge title companies in this country, Chicago Title and First American. There are a bunch of other ones, but those are the 2 sort of behemoths. They're both publicly traded companies. And they'll typically offer their closing services for free as part of or for a reduced fee for they're providing title on a particular transaction. We talk about a couple of different concepts there. We talk about, you can summarize on a combined settlement statement both a buyer and a seller. Okay? So both a buyer and a seller could be on a combined, or there could be two separate statements. There's one that just has what relates to the buyer, it's given to the buyer, and what relates to the seller, that's given to the seller. When we talk about a concept which we call credit, and a concept which we call charge. Okay, at the end, credits and charges have to equal. They don't have to be the same on both sides, but they have to equal. The best way to think about it is credits would be things that inure to the benefit of the party, and charges would be things that they're responsible for. So for example, the one thing that impacts both the buyer and the seller is purchase price. So the purchase price would typically be a credit to the seller because it inures to their benefit, and it would be a charge to the buyer because it goes on his account. We don't call them debits. No, we don't call them debits or credits. We call them credits and charges. Okay. We call them credits and charges. Okay, and let's take a look at. Let's say that a loan is going to be paid off that the seller has. Well, a loan that will be paid off at closing would be a credit. I'm sorry, would be a charge. A charge to the seller. If a loan is being assumed, and in that case, so if the loan is just being paid off, it's going to be a charge to the seller. If a loan is being assumed by a buyer, it is going to be a credit to the buyer and a charge to the seller.
No.
You're selling a liability.
Yeah, it's an asset.
Well, it's selling a
Hold
liability.
on,
You said the house is being
I'm not talking. I didn't say anything about a house.
assumed. You said the loan being assumed.
The loan is being assumed by this guy. It's a credit to him because he's assuming a liability, and it's a charge to him.
That's what I want.
It's on his account. Instead of him paying it, somebody else is going to pay it. It's got to be paid. The operating thing is at the end, these things have to equal. Now, this doesn't have to equal that, but these two have to equal. Okay? Now what happens? There's all kinds of stuff going on. Typical things that could be on a buyer's side. Title premiums, escrow fees, attorney fees. Any fees, a buyer goes out there and secures financing. He's got to pay an attorney. He's got to pay the bank's attorney. He's got to file the mortgage. It's got to be recorded. So anything that's related, again, for the benefit, the typical thing would be if the contract is silent and doesn't address any of these issues, it's typically going to be charged to the person that, that inures to their benefit, okay? Some recording fees. Prorations. We typically prorate expenses. So whether it's property taxes for the number of periods, but it could be if we close on a commercial building in the middle of a month, there's going to be, the easiest thing to say is we'll have the utility company come and cut, the statement on that date, but sometimes they don't do that. So you got to take a statement for a month, and you've got to prorate X number of days here, X number of days there. The easiest thing to do is to close at the end of the month, and the new guy bills all the rents. Sometimes you close in the middle of the month. You've got to prorate the rents that were collected by the previous guy. Okay, so you get, and on the seller side, what do you typically see? Commissions. Most commercial transactions typically only have sell-side commissions. Most commercial transactions only have sell-side commissions. What are commissions on sales transactions? 6%. They're not 6%.
Depends.
Not resident, I mean not commercial.
Depends. No.
2%.
It depends.
1%.
3%. Depends.
One and down.
It's a commission.
What, you're
Well,
selling
you're
a
getting
50,
1% of
you're
what?
selling, you're selling a $50 million asset and you're getting a point.
That doesn't suck to
That's
me.
500,000.
Well, maybe that's not that bad.
I'll take that.
Or if you go, there's the guy that runs the real estate program at FIU, Bill Harden. an academic study. I mean, I remember having lunch with him a few years ago, and he was like really excited because they just published this. And so they published an article in which they essentially substantiated that a broker did not add value in a commercial transaction. And I said, we had to do a study to do that. I could have told you that without doing the study. But the rationale is not that they don't add value. The thing is, when you talk about institutional investment sales, you really have to presume that buyers and sellers know more than anybody else. And really the only thing that the intermediary provides is an appearance or the semblance or the reality of an arm's length transaction. Because in a commercial transaction, you know, if Northwestern is selling an asset that AEW is buying, those guys know more than the broker. They're the ones that are doing all the financing. It's not a residential transaction. They understand the business. So from that perspective, there really is a rationale for there being a reduced, you know, a reduced rate. But the other reason is that you're talking about significantly larger, you know, larger transactions. So I'd say a point is high. You typically see some sort of scale down from that. I say that the case study you'll have actually has commissions on both sides. Sometimes a buyer will engage a broker to find transactions for them off market. So, okay. Seller, you know, is going to have, so I said, commissions. They're also going to have, you know, potentially some doc stamps, recording, maybe title, whatever they've agreed, survey, whatever they've agreed to pay on behalf. There might be defeasance, there might be long payoffs. There's going to be prorations both on expense and revenue side, okay? Any unfinished work, any deposits that they may have held on behalf of the tenants. Okay, so, you know, the case will walk you through this, okay? Benefits obtained, you can plan, and you've got a history of everything. From certain service providers, brokers love closings. Why? They're going to get paid. Attorneys love closings. Why? They're going to get paid. What happens when a closing happens? The cash disappears. And so any service provider in a commercial transaction is going to make sure that the escrow agent is going to get their invoice. The surveyors are going to send everything in, all the people that do copy, they're going to send their stuff there. The attorneys are going to have, the planners, everybody's going to have their invoice at the escrow agent. Because the minute cash is distributed, it disappears. Okay? It provides trail. It can also let you see, you know, it provides an audit trail, okay? A couple things. I know you've got a legal class, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on title policy. You guys do title, don't you? You guys done title, so do I need to read?
So always, that's like always.
So then I don't have to go over. So for those, just as a primer, title policy, I'll just say as a little, title policy essentially helps a buyer obtain clear title. And so you've got kind of different layers. You've got basic policies, and then you've got extended coverages, but they're going to deal with things like forgeries, impersonations, lack of competency. Extended coverages might deal with things like unrecorded liens, encumbrances that you may have, stuff like that, okay? I'm going to sort of let you work through the case because, so what I've done, and I'll send you a backup, or I'll send you a little bit of history on the case, but I've summarized this from a real transaction that I did. I think it was 2008, and it's a cluster. There's shit flying everywhere. But that's the way it happened. And we were doing a huge 1031 at the time. I had like 10 or 12 closings going on at the same time. And I say the same time, within the same 180-day period, and all sort of back-ended. So within 30 days, we reinvested $600 million. So my office was a mess. And so what I had were buckets, right? I had files for each asset, and stuff was coming in. Invoices were coming in, you know, stopples. I mean, all kinds of stuff was happening, you know. And that's the way life works. You're going to see in this particular closing, there's multiple deposits, right? So you're sending escrow, you're making deposits. Typically, you might have to put a good faith deposit up front, and then you're gonna go hard at some point. You might only see a couple of deposits prior to closing. You're gonna see multiple deposits in this transaction. Why? Because the closing kept getting pushed off, and the estimates kept coming in different every day. We had to keep sending additional money because all of a sudden new charges were coming in every day, okay? So it's cluster. So my advice, and I'm going to put it there, if you're going to work through this, and I encourage you to work through this, is to gather the facts. They're not going to all be organized. I'm going to give you a template of an Excel spreadsheet from First American, but I'm not going to send you a spreadsheet so you can practice building your own spreadsheet. And don't just copy it. Try to tailor it to what your specific transaction is. Okay, everyone is unique. So I'll send that to you, and I think you can kind of see how it'll walk you right, to the promised land if you follow if you organize it, and take off the things. You tackle one item at a time. Okay, now we're talking about rent prorations. Okay, let's prorate the rents. We're talking about tax prorations. Okay, let's prorate that. We've got a loan payoff. Let's figure out what the balance is. Let's figure out whose credit is it and whose charge is it, okay? Let's get all the deposits. Let's put them all here. Let's break up all the legal fees. Who's responsible for this fee? Who's responsible for that fee? Okay? If we just follow along, it's really very easy. I rarely have people that do a great job because they get lost in trying to do a lot of different things at once. Try to tackle one line item at a time, okay? So I'll leave you with that, and then you can clear your desks and we'll get a quiz. How many questions do you want? One. One and done.
Agreed. 10-year
I'll give you 5. I got like 15 here. I'll give you 5. You should get most of them right easily, I think. Most of them. Can't believe it. Time goes by so fast. Ready? Armando, are you ready? Yes. Ready? Ready? James? Okay.
He went out. He'll be back.
Okay, well, I can repeat the question. Question number 1. Question number 1. For GAAP purposes, a company must perform a line-by-line consolidation if it has a controlling financial interest in another entity. That's a fact.
True.
What percentage ownership is deemed to signify control? For GAAP reporting purposes, a company must perform a line-by-line consolidation if it has a controlling financial interest in another entity. What percentage ownership is deemed to signify control? Question number 2. This one's true or false. If an entity is deemed to be a VIE, a variable interest entity, it must be consolidated. True or false? If an entity is deemed to be a VIE, a variable interest entity, it must be consolidated. True or false? Question number 3. Question number 3. For U.S. tax purposes,